Appalachian Arcana.
Hello, hello, and welcome to Appalachian Arcana, the podcast where we bring you tales of the strange and unusual from Appalachia. I'm Cam Collins, and this is my co-host, Sarah Falk.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening at Elder Brew. Thank you for braving this snowstorm that we just had, 8 inches of accumulation here in Bristol.
And braving the very unscraped, icy parking lots as well.
Oh, yeah. They're pretty nasty.
It's treacherous. It's treacherous.
Whew. So, we're bringing a very interesting tale to you this evening. Corpsewood Manor. So apparently, this is reportedly one of Georgia's most haunted locations. It's located in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains in Chattooga County, Georgia, a very remote rural area. I always have a problem. Rural. Just purr it out, just like that. It's about 4 hours from here. The ruins of the manor are way out in the woods, property surrounded by a national forest. Some people, including one of its owners, described it as the castle in the woods. Even before the murders, there were rumors of devil worship, hauntings, and we must say over the years, they've only grown more prevalent over time. So to study Corpsewood Manor is to get to know the 2 victims involved, starting with an eccentric pharmacologist.
Dr. Charles Lee Scudder was born in Wisconsin in 1926. He studied at Oberlin College in the 40s, where he met his first wife, and that marriage soon ended in divorce. He studied drama, music, and art, but eventually decided to pursue a career in science. So he went on to study.
Man.
What?
Big old Renaissance man we got here.
Yeah, very much so, as we'll see. So Charles went on to study at Loyola University in Chicago and earned degrees in zoology, languages, and chemistry before earning his PhD in pharmacology in 1964. And as Sarah said, he, was kind of a Renaissance man. He was also a talented harpist. Talented enough to, Sarah, he was even invited to play with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra.
No way.
Yeah, so, and as we'll see, he had many talents. In the 50s, he married his second wife, and the 2 had 4 sons before this marriage, too, ended pretty quickly in divorce. And then, in 1959, he met Joseph Odom, who he had hired to help care for the house and cook for him and the boys. But it becomes clear that soon became a very different relationship.
Oh, yes.
After graduating, Dr. Scudder became the associate director for the Loyola University Institute for Mind, Drugs, and Behavior. And the interesting thing about that is the Institute for Mind, Drugs, and Behavior was involved with MK-Ultra, the CIA's infamous experiments into using LSD-25 for mind control, and amongst other drugs, but mostly, when you hear about it, they're talking about they had people drop acid. And it's one of the things that's pretty interesting is that part is not a rumor. They, there was documentation, like papers he had written about it and everything found in the house. So, this guy we know, was actually involved with MK-Ultra, and there are definitely, some conspiracy theories out there about the murders, which are, complete crap. I mean, it had nothing to do with that. But anyway, it's pretty interesting.
It really is. We sifted through quite a bit, many accounts before we could really get our hands on accurate accounts.
Charles was known around the university as an eccentric. And remember, we're talking 50s, 60s. He sometimes dyed his hair purple or red, kept a pet monkey, and bought this rambling old mansion and filled it with antiques that he had bought from a theater. So it was very, very dramatic. Interesting
incredibly.
character.
Yes, they don't really talk much about the monkey, but I really hope it was a capuchin monkey that they put a little saddle on his cat or his dog and it rode around the house.
I hope it was, I would hope it was nothing because I'm terrified of monkeys. They're horrifying little monster creatures.
Oh, some of them are indeed, Cam. Some of them are indeed. So Dr. Scudder, another interesting fact about our favorite pharmacologist, he is also a member of the Church of Satan. It's not exactly, if you haven't studied on the Church of Satan, it's not exactly what would first come to mind. It was founded by Anton LaVey. It's more of an atheistic religion, not worshiping Satan per se, but worshiping more like oneself and indulging one's own desires, going against the tenets of traditional Abrahamic religion, the things that bring shame upon man, indulge in those things.
And also, I mean, it's, especially these days, it's more of a political organization than...
It really is.
Yeah.
Much more so, fulfilling the desires of the flesh. And so, a little bit more about Joseph and Joe Odom. He was 12 years Dr. Scudder's junior, born in 1938 in Chicago. He had a 5th grade formal education, in stark contrast to Dr. Scudder, and at some point been in some minor trouble with the law. He had become an accomplished cook, known among his friends for his awesome culinary skills. Unlike Dr. Scudder, Joe, he told everyone, I'm Catholic. He always dreamed of living a simpler life. He always cooked with iron skillets and ironstone platters, even in Chicago. He did not like appliances. He loathed them.
In fact, there are a couple of accounts where they talk about he would tie the cords, keep them unplugged when they weren't anything, like tie the cords in knots.
Yes. When I saw that, I chuckled a little bit. He'd always wanted to cook on a wood stove.
Yeah, so I mean, these guys are definitely an interesting couple because they're very different. Mm-hmm. But they did both dream of a simpler life. By the 1970s, Charles Scudder was growing disillusioned and depressed with their life in Chicago. The old house was crumbling. It was just constantly in need of repairs, which were costly. And between the repairs, utility bills, taxes, the pay raises he was getting at the university couldn't really keep up with inflation. So that was stressful. Their neighborhood was becoming kind of run down and dangerous too. He said his students seemed, more and more unruly and less interested in learning, and his department had, quote, become a hotbed of backbiting and office politics. So, he's not happy with, the neighborhood and life, and his job, his job is kind of starting to suck. And then also, he was still, struggling with grief. His youngest son had died in 1970. So, he's really looking for a change.
Oh, yeah.
And after some soul searching, Charles and Joe began looking for a place to move. They knew they wanted to live in a hilly area out in the country with a good supply of wood for Joey's wood stove that he wanted, and also heating. And, they wanted something isolated. Dr. Scudder wrote, "After years of enduring the sensory overload of city life, I desperately wanted to be situated where I could neither see nor hear my neighbors." So, yeah, they're looking for a big change. And what they did is they studied geological survey maps to find parts of the country that would meet their requirements, and started writing to realtors in likely areas. And eventually, a realtor answered in Tryon, Georgia, and they chose an inexpensive plot of 40 acres located in the Appalachian foothills of North Georgia.
Nice. So, On his 50th birthday, this is October 6th, 1976, Dr. Scudder tendered his resignation from the university. He auctioned off all of the furniture and other possessions that he and Joe didn't want to take with them. He sold his property in Chicago, hired movers to transport their remaining possessions, took a few souvenirs with him, set off for Tryon, Georgia in his Jeep with Joey and their 2 English Mastiffs, Beelzebub and Asenath. And on this journey down to Georgia, they got caught in the middle of a blizzard. A big old gnarly blizzard. If I was telling Cam, at least they were in a Jeep instead of like a Toyota.
Yeah, I think by this time it was December of 76.
Yes.
And they got lost.
They got very, very lost trying to find the road to the property. Actually, it turns out there were several roads that took you up to the property. And when they found the road taking them to it, as they're driving up, there's a horse carcass lying right there on the side of the road. And gotta love their sense of humor. They dubbed it Dead Horse Road.
Yeah, when you own the property, you get to name the road, so.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so they spent 6 long years building their dream home from the ground up. I mean, we're talking foundation, laying brick by brick.
And these dudes were not architects or contractors. I mean, they really just are like, okay, we'll learn by doing. Let's build a house, which is kind of crazy.
It is absolutely insane, Cam.
I don't think you could do that now. I mean, building codes. It's kind of nuts.
And it's like you gotta be off the grid for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, way off the grid. I mean, that's what they were looking for. So.
And to see someone too who lived in this beautiful home in Chicago, built in 1904 by one of Frank Lloyd Wright's students, and just taking the inspiration that he's gathered over the years to come up with their castle in the woods. I mean, listen to this. They ended up building a 2-story brick home with a grand gazebo entrance. I mean, we were really impressed as we were viewing photos.
And it has a gargoyle on it. I mean, it's like
pink gargoyle.
I know. And once we post this episode to our website, we will actually we'll add some photos so you guys could get a better idea of what we're talking about here.
Absolutely, it's hauntingly beautiful. You'll see these photos. They somehow managed, I guess, in keeping with the theme of keeping the spirits out, they have curved walls.
The curved walls, yeah.
They even
it's said to ward off evil, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting. They even had a retractable drawbridge from their second floor leading to a sun deck that sat over the gazebo entrance, guarded by the pink gargoyle.
It's a drawbridge. They put a drawbridge on their house. This is like obviously a house built by nerds.
Truly so. And Charles, it's noted, he performed the majority of the physical labor required. Joe was in a serious car accident and left him with an injured leg and some possible head trauma. Charles, he was a purveyor of all the fine things in life, and he made his own homemade wine. So he planted a vineyard, and Joe planted a beautiful rose garden. They also wrote up their plans and built a 3-story chicken house upon completion of their home. Chickens were residing on the first floor. Upstairs was used for entertaining. The second floor was for grain, dry goods storage. Scudder later wrote an article about building the house for Mother Earth magazine, which he titled, as we had mentioned a little earlier, A Castle in the Country. They named the house Corpsewood Manor, or Corpsewood, for the stand of dying trees they found on the spot when they arrived. Just barren trees in the winter.
Yeah.
And they placed a sign at the entrance of their property. We just love their sense of humor, stating, "Beware of the thing."
I mean, admittedly, I mean, maybe there's something to it because, there are reports of people, having unusual experiences there even before this happened. So, maybe.
Possibly.
So, once they got settled in to the house, they started to make friends in the neighborhood and basically just kind of live out this dream retired life. Charles painted and created stained glass, and he played his gold-plated harp. Infamously, he created or recreated the Church of Satan's Baphomet sigil in stained glass, and you can find photos of it online. Actually, I even found a color photo of it, so we'll be posting that to the site too. And Joe cooked on his wood stove and worked in the rose garden. It really seems like, like I said, they're living out the dream of retirement, and they felt like they could really be themselves. Mm-hmm. They weren't trying to hide the fact that Charles was a Satanist. They painted pentagrams on the Jeep and had this big bronze statue of Mephistopheles. And the home was filled with books on the occult tools, art, and artifacts. And they, were just kind of like, hey, we don't have to keep up appearances for the university. We're, just going to be ourselves.
Yeah. The freedom.
Yeah. And they made friends in the area and seemed to have been pretty well liked. Which is, at least at first, which is, wow, Georgia in the 70s? Okay. Okay. That's a little surprising. But they didn't allow most people to actually come into Corpsewood Manor, the house itself, only their closest friends. They did most of their entertaining on the top floor of the chicken house in what they called the Pink Room.
Oh, yes. The infamous Pink Room. Painted with paint given to them by a friend. Really, it was kind of a sparse space, just a couple of mattresses and a space heater dotted around, not much else there. Basically, they hosted pleasure parties, sex parties here.
That's reportedly, that's what was going on up there.
And they encouraged guests to explore themselves, explore their sexuality, indulge themselves. Also provided their homemade wine to guests and also had LSD on hand just in case anyone was interested.
Yeah. Apparently Charles made off with some of the university's stock of LSD.
LSD 25.
But I mean, from all accounts, they didn't, from what I understand, they didn't pressure anyone into, either taking drugs or, indulging in the sex parties. They really, were just kind of like, hey, explore. These things are on offer. It seems like, pretty harmless and, all in good fun.
Why, of course. And, just be a matter of time before rumors begin to spread about the orgies and the Satanism taking place at Corpsewood. Local teens started daring each other to go up to the devil worshippers' castle.
Yeah. And given the time and satanic panic, it's not exactly surprising. But unfortunately, these guys who, from all accounts seem to have been just, really nice, fine people, would come to a tragic end. It seems like, in part due to these rumors and things like that.
Very sad.
And I really get the impression that the killers basically thought they could get away with it because they killed a gay couple and one was a Satanist. Mm-hmm. So what happened was on December 12th, 1982, Charles and Joe were visited by a friend, or someone they thought was a friend, Avery Brock. They had met Brock when they found him hunting on their property. And again, one more example of how, these are actually really nice guys. Instead of, chasing him off or calling the cops, they welcomed him and, offered him some wine and became friends. Apparently, he had visited them on many occasions. There are reports that Avery may have become involved with them sexually, but that to me seems pretty unclear. Some of the reports say that he'd had sex with Scudder. Others say that he propositioned them for a threesome and they said no, and he was mad about it. I just think he was a greedy bastard, basically.
Very, very greedy.
So Brock was accompanied by his friend and roommate Tony West, as well as Tony's nephew Joey Wells and Teresa Hutchins. Joey and Teresa were basically just teenagers on a first date. I don't know why these idiots thought it was a good idea to just bring these completely uninvolved kids along with them. But basically, Joey's car was in the shop, but he had this date, and he's like, and so they're like, oh, well, come along. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah, we need a lift, Uncle. Can we ride with you? Sure, we're going to take part in some mischief and mayhem and even more. But just come along.
Come along, yeah. So apparently the four had been huffing paint thinner and glue, a mixture known as a Toodaloo.
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 It's fun to say, Toodaloo.
Like okie doke. But, little known to the teenagers, Brock and West were planning to rob and murder the couple. Apparently, Brock had become convinced that they were rich from hanging out with them, which they weren't. They're, living on a fixed income, which was actually it was part of the inheritance that Charles had used to, buy the property and build Corpsewood.
After his parents' passing.
So yeah, these two idiots hatched a plot to rob them, and they thought they would just run away and start new lives. So yeah, these are, the four people who show up on December 12th at Corpsewood. And, Charles, being basically just the consummate host, always hospitable, welcomes them in, takes them up to the pink room, opens up some wine, and they're all, basically just kind of hanging out, drinking wine.
Yeah, exactly. So they're just up there in the pink room having a good time. Earlier in the day, I believe it was, Brock had gathered his rifle that he took rabbit hunting. He brought it with him, so he steps out to the car, grabs his rifle,
and goes back up to the pink room.
Goes right back up to the pink room, rifle in tow. Charles, at first, he's not really afraid. He giggles a little and goes, bang, bang. And being the intellect that he is, he just a very reasonable person. Tries to diffuse the situation before he realizes that this one can't be diffused. So Wells and Hutchins on their first date are probably, I can't even imagine how much they're freaking out right now.
Oh, yeah, they're scared. They're definitely scared. They're like, the fuck is going on? You have what? Why do you have a rifle?
Yeah, there's a rifle. This is really happening right now. They attempted to leave, tried to make it out to the car. Nuh-uh, wasn't going to happen. West followed them, ordered them back inside. Found Brock holding a knife to Charles' throat, demanding the money that he thought that Charles had. Brock and West cut strips from the sheets, used them to bind and gag Charles. Brock leaves the chicken house. He goes to the main house. He shoots Joe point blank in cold blood.
And the dogs also.
Oh.
And apparently, he must have just immediately gone in and done this because from what I was reading, the dogs didn't even have time to get up. They were still curled up in front of the fireplace. He just shot them both dead.
So sad.
Yeah.
There he goes after this cold murder of the three. He returns to the chicken house, orders everyone into the main house. Charles sees Joe on the floor. Oh, this just breaks my heart. He begins moaning and crying through the gag. He's distraught. Brock and Wes threaten Charles with a soldering iron. And, come on, we don't have electricity here. Charles just explains that they don't have electricity. I'm so sorry, but I don't believe you can use that on me. Charles gets up. He attempts to reach Joe. And through just a quaking, sobbing voice.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much it's from what I was reading. He's just trying to hobble across the floor to get to him and crying and saying, I asked for this, and it's not really clear what he meant by that, but it's just so sad.
That's gut wrenching, Cam.
Yeah.
I've not read something this sad. In West, he ordered Charles to stop his crying, shoots him in the face when he did not. Charles falls to his knees and he attempts to speak and stand. West shoots him 4 more times in the head. And Charles finally
I think he shoots him once more in the head, and the rest are like in the back.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was
it's
really
pretty,
gruesome.
It's gruesome.
Brock and West, they ransack the house attempting to find these valuables.
Yeah. They're looking for money or anything else that they would identify as valuable, and it's just not there. Right. I mean, what they have that is valuable would be art and things like that, which they wouldn't know what to do with. I mean, they just
And Charles and Joe, they spent their money on experiences.
Yeah.
And they learned this the hard way whenever they ransacked the house, turned it upside down. Aside from the gold-plated harp and the art, they were in for a shock. So they eventually flee the scene, taking Wells and Hutchins with them. Talk about a bad first date. And poor Miss Hutchins. She was essentially held prisoner at Wells' home for the next 4 days. And we're thinking that she escapes to notify police of the occurrences.
Yeah, she does. She does eventually escape. She actually escapes on the day that the bodies were found, interestingly enough. On December 16th, Charles and Joe's neighbor, Raymond Williams, visits Corpsewood. He was basically coming over to inform them that a mutual friend had passed away. And so he walks up to the door, and there are bullet holes in the door. And he's like, oh, shit. And, backs away, calls the police. And, they come. Like I said, same day, Teresa escapes, goes straight to the police station to tell them what happened. So it's, it doesn't take them long to solve this. It's, quickly hits the papers. It's, very sensational. Because reportedly during the investigation, the police find at the house 2 human skulls, souvenirs, Charles said, that he brought with him from Chicago, 3 vials allegedly filled with LSD-25, numerous occult tools, a small occult library, a large general academic and literature library, gay porn, and a painting of Charles. It's a self-portrait that he painted actually months before this incident. But creepily enough, it is a painting of himself bound and gagged with blood dripping from 5 bullet wounds.
That is freaky.
Yeah, like you read this and you just get chills. He basically predicted his own death. Yeah, it's very spooky. And I actually I did find also a photo of the painting. And yeah, it's creepy.
That is. And so, upon this discovery, the trial takes place. Dr. Scudder had been accused of spiking the wine that evening with LSD. Can you believe that? And West tried to use the defense of involuntary intoxication, and the defense attorney went as far to say on the matter of the supposed drugging that he had a motive because he was a homosexual.
Yeah,
How twisted is that?
The defense tactics in this trial were just,
atrocious.
Just despicable bullshit, blaming the victim.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just unreal. However, after testing the bottle of wine, police tested it. There is not a single trace of LSD in the wine.
Yeah, it's just wine. It's just victim blaming bullshit is what it is.
It really is. And West himself had confessed to a GBI agent that he and Brock had planned the murders and robbery. So premeditation right there on the table. He also told the GBI agent that Brock wanted to kill Scudder because Scudder had once engaged in fellatio with Brock. West's confession to Chattooga County Sheriff Tony Gilliland stated, in quotes, "All I can say is that they were devils, and I killed them. That's how I feel about it."
Yeah, wow.
Despicable.
Yeah.
My blood's boiling in my veins right now. Thankfully, the jury wasn't swayed by this prejudicial line of reasoning. And Brock pled guilty, and he was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms in prison. West was found guilty and sentenced to death by electrocution. The death sentence was later overturned. Instead, he got 2 consecutive life sentences.
Yeah, it's really interesting that the guy who actually pled guilty got, a longer sentence than the guy who didn't. But it's like, wow, you didn't really cut much of a deal there, bro. You got out of the death penalty at least. But I mean, it's, the whole thing is just such a sad, sad story.
It really is.
These poor men who are, basically killed in part for being different, but also for money.
Yes.
It's just, but yeah, that's, and so again, like you said, and now it is supposedly one of Georgia's most haunted locations. And actually, it's really interesting. Police officers who were investigating the scene, I mean, even then, 4 days later, were reporting, feeling a presence and feeling like they were being watched. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very spooky. And the house has basically just crumbled into ruins since this happened. But interestingly, it is a place that you can visit, even though it is still private property. They basically don't care if people visit. Right. And so, you can actually find online instructions, how to find it, how to get there, and I think we need to go.
We should totally go.
We should do like a bonus follow-up episode. We need to go.
We're putting it on our calendar. When it gets a little bit warmer. We can't hit a blizzard.
When it's warmer, a lot warmer. much
blizzards
warmer.
for us.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, tonight is the eve of the anniversary of the murders.
Yeah. They happened on December 12th, so yeah. This is the eve of the anniversary.
Wow. Just so twisted, though. 2 individuals seeking out their dream, achieving their dream, not being afraid to achieve it. And then resentful folks who
just take it all away.
An illusion of wealth, resentment, leading to this terrible hate crime.
And rabid homophobia.
Of course.
It's just like, that is the story of the Corpsewood murders, you guys.
Yes, thank you for joining us this evening.
And thanks so much to our friends at Elder Brew for hosting us again. Thank you, Shane. Woo! Be sure to visit our website at AppalachianArcana.com and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you have a story you want to share with us or an idea for a story you think we should cover, email us at AppalachianArcana@gmail.com. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, and good night.